For a long time, I considered Sonic 3 and Knuckles the pinnacle of the 2D platformer genre, with its polished physics, varied and expansive level design, poppy soundtrack and beautifully well thought out art style. I found myself returning to it almost annually to re-experience one of my favourite games and lamenting how its quality remains unsurpassed more than 20 years later. However, the release of Sonic Mania in 2017 has called that into question. Developed for Sega by a passionate outsourced team, many of the members of which have roots in the Sonic fan game scene, this aims to be a celebration of all the amazing things that the classic Sonic games for the Sega Mega Drive had to bring us, and with that it threatens to usurp Sonic 3 and Knuckles for my personal top 2D platformer of all time. So how does it fare? Gameplay here brings the series back to its side-scrolling roots and feels wonderful for it. It's difficult to explain to someone who isn't heavily familiar with the classic titles, but everything controls exactly as you would expect it to. You don't get any incidents like Sonic 4 Episode 1 or even Generations where the physics seem to be fighting your movements, but instead there's a very definite amount of weight and momentum and subtle attention to detail with every move you make. Slopes and angles will affect the height and distance of your jumps, momentum and inertia strongly influence your movements, and all in all, it's a challenging yet rewarding control scheme as it always has been that really makes you feel like you're part of the environment. Players have the same amount of character choice as Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and each character controls almost exactly the same as they did in those games, with the noted exception of Sonic himself, who gave up the insta-shield for the new drop dash move. This allows the player to roll straight into a spin dash from any jump by pressing the button again in mid-air. Tails has his flight mechanic, Knuckles can glide, climb walls, etc. Graphically, Sonic Mania aims for a very specific visual style. What if we got a true follow-up to Sonic 3 and Knuckles on the Sega Saturn? And it absolutely nails it. Sprites expand upon the classics with deeper shading and tons more frames of animation, and the whole game exhibits more vibrant colours a la Sonic CD and Knuckles Chaotix. Sprite rotation and scaling effects are shoved in your face like it's 1995 again, and the 3D models in the special stages are chunky and cute as you run along chasing down the Chaos Emeralds through a psychedelic dreamscape. It all goes a long way to really get you into a certain mindset, although credit where it's due, there are some modern quality of life improvements too, such as a widescreen aspect ratio and a smooth 60 FPS frame rate. As for the soundtrack of Sonic Mania, I can honestly say these songs have never been better. T-Lopes brings a lot of influence from Naofumi Hataya's Sonic CD soundtrack to the table, but ironically surpasses even that soundtrack with blaring brass, jazzy synths, and even some sampling references to the work of Hideki Naganuma on Jet Set Radio here and there. Some of the more well-known levels tracks have little variation from their originals, but when they were so good in the first place, a migration from the 16-bit FM synth to CD quality audio was really all that could be done to improve them. The plot is minimalistic and told chiefly via pantomime cutscenes, also much like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but there's a bit of expository text available in the digital manual if you care to go looking for it. It's a three-way battle over the Phantom Ruby between Sonic, Dr. Robotnik, and a group of powered-up rogue robots called the Hard-Boiled Heavies, and let me tell you now, these guys make Lost World's Deadly Six look like such an utter joke in visuals alone. They're so appealing to look at, and so much character is packed into their animations, even though they never say a word. What is the Phantom Ruby though? How does it work, and what's Eggman planning to do with it? Well, the game doesn't do very well at explaining that, but if the true ending is anything to go by, that will all be answered in Sonic Forces, for better or worse. Regardless, the game's plot is less of an interwoven narrative and more of an excuse to take you to the various different levels of this game in a sort of greatest hits compilation of the Mega Drive trilogy and Sonic CD. Sometimes transitions between levels make perfect sense, and other times it can actually be a little jarring, such as Stardust Speedway to Hydrocity. The choices of levels for the most part are superb. We have the iconic stuff mixed in with a few underappreciated zones, you know, the kind you don't really realise how good they are until you play through them again. And Oil Ocean as well, I guess. I still hate that level. And even if your favourite level isn't in here, cough cough Marble Garden, oftentimes one of the other levels will borrow enough elements from it you won't feel cheated. In fact, callbacks are frequent and plentiful. There's a lot for you to get nostalgic about if you're a die-hard Sonic fan like I'm ashamed to be, but there's a couple of elements in particular that I can imagine could be confusing and possibly even frustrating in one instance to brand new players. It seems like most media outlets can't seem to talk about Sonic Mania without talking about the rough patch the size of Jupiter the series has had, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume you don't need me to explain it to you as well. You're adults, I hope. You can do your own research. But there is something about the context this game was made in, the underdog title that Christian Whitehead has brought into existence through hard work, perseverance, and sheer passion. But if there's one complaint to be made about Sonic Mania, it's just how much of the game is recycled from previous entries in the series. Only a quarter of the included zones are original to this game. I don't know who insisted that we need to go through Green Hill Zone for a 16th time, and yes, I counted, but I really wish they would just stop already. I was in awe during the entirety of Press Garden in particular, simply because of how new it was. Studiopolis had its share of cues being taken from Spring Yard and Casino Night, granted, but even that was still an original level. These are new and never before seen in a Sonic game, let alone one of the classics. In conclusion, Sonic Mania manages to squeeze an awe-inspiring amount of joy from level tropes that I thought had run dry years ago. The art direction is utterly splendid, T-Lopes brings the jams in full swing, every level keeps you on your toes with a sweet surprise, and all this with some of the best controls the Sonic series has ever had. Well, you can bet I was glued to the TV with a gigantic smile on my face like I was 9 years old picking up Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the first time again, but there's no argument that this entry in the Sonic series is truly at its best when the development team are allowed to explore their own themes and ideas without the hand-wringing corporate shadow of Sega looming over them and getting nervous about what might happen if they actually use their imaginations. I cannot say for certain if Sonic Mania betters Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I think it would be too early to make such a massive decision, but I currently feel that the two are at least on par with each other. If you enjoy 2D platforming, gorgeous pixel art, and are feeling a bit nostalgic, then this game will definitely be up your street.